So we're going to learn from the Sefer Baal Shem Tov. And in the Sefer Baal Shem Tov, there's a section called Amud HaTfilah. Now, the Sefer Baal Shem Tov is a likud. It's a collection. The Baal Shem Tov didn't write it. But it's collected from the Svarim of his Talmidim. Wherever they brought something from the Baal Shem Tov, then it was included here. Someone went through all the Svarim to collect just the pieces from the Baal Shem Tov, and this is how we have the Sefer Baal Shem Tov. So after Parshas Noach, there's a section called Amud HaTfilah. Amud HaTfilah speaks about prayer, how to pray. Someone is saying there's no sound over here. That makes sense? Can anybody else hear me?
This sound, did you?
You're hearing me, okay. Okay then. And so the Amud HaTfilah is about prayer. It's about davening. And it's specifically the Baal Shem Tov's approach to davening. Because davening has been going on in Klal Yisrael for thousands of years. But what does davening mean? What are we doing when we are talking? Who are we talking to? What are we trying to accomplish? And those who've learned a little bit Chassidut, those who are more connected to Kabbalah, they know that the davening can never do something other than your kavanah, meaning your action in the spiritual realm is only done by your kavanah, by nothing else. So everything we're doing in davening, all the movement that's happening in davening, including the words that we are using, it's all to be mechaven the kavanah. It's all to direct our focus, our attention. Because the attention is what's doing the work in the spiritual realm, nothing else. There's no other part of the davening that's going to change anything other than the intention. So for thousands of years we've been davening, but the intention of what it means to daven, and what am I doing, and what am I trying to do, and who am I talking to, this is what's going to result in something being done in the spiritual realm, or just more frustration, more imagination, more fooling ourselves, as if we're doing a worship, we're doing a lip service to something or to someone, and that someone doesn't even exist or care, and obviously there's going to be no results. And so the Baal Shem Tov is the perfect person to teach us about davening, because this was one of his main strengths, his ability to influence the higher worlds. And as is known, when the Baal Shem Tov would daven, he would just travel away. Through his kavanah, he would travel completely away from the physical body that he was in. Sometimes his eyes would remain open, and tears would just flow out of his eyes as he was going through the prayer. And he had a lot of work that he was doing in there. In general, the Baal Shem Tov, Baruch Hashem, people know who he is. We don't have to give a big introduction to the personality that we're talking about. But if we're going to learn from him, if we're going to learn his wisdom, it's good to understand what type of a person we're dealing with. This is a person that single-handedly resurrected Judaism from the grave. Judaism was pretty much dead at the time the Baal Shem Tov came into the world. There were a few people that had some insight into the real meaning of Judaism, but those people were usually pushed away from the mainstream, and some of them were even put in cherem, as happened to the Baal Shem Tov himself also. So everybody trying to resurrect the truth, everybody trying to speak about the truth, or to make the truth known to the masses, would be isolated. And there would be severe consequences, because people lived then in a very small mind, in a very limited mindset, because of the surroundings, because of the goyim they were amongst. They were amongst very low-level goyim. Even between the goyim, there are different levels of goyim. The goyim in Eastern Europe, especially at that time, were extremely self-hating. They were murderous. They were not gentle or kind in any way, shape, or form, not even to their own kind, and obviously not to others, whatever others might be. And of course, Jews always get categorized as another. And therefore, the Jews suffered immensely from all the different versions, whether it was the Polish, the Ukrainian, the Hungarian, the Lithuanian, the Russian, all of them, very, very low elements, very extreme brutality. And so in such an environment comes a light that overcomes this difficulty, this heaviness, and speaks to us about the beauty of creation, speaks to us about the sweetness of the Creator, speaks to us about the desire for us and the intention for us to be the ones who inherit the earth. And so the Baal Shem Tov is a very extreme example of a successful soul, even though his ultimate success would be to bring the redemption, and he didn't succeed in doing that yet. But it's his work that's going to bring about the redemption. It's through connecting to his message that we're going to be able to help this process that he began in order to get to the final phase where the good actually wins over evil, where the gentle and the kind become the leaders of the earth. And those who until now were not gentle and kind suddenly realize the error of their way, suddenly realize how important it is to change. And so this conflict between the kind and the unkind that happened between Klal Yisrael and the nations around it also happened within Klal Yisrael. Because that's what happens when we go amongst the Goyim. Vayisarvu b'goyim vayilmedu maseim. That Klal Yisrael starts thinking and feeling like the Goyim and start behaving and speaking like the Goyim afterwards. And then this is why people like this, who are filled with light, were alienated and sometimes completely separated from the Klal, because the perception of the Klal, the understanding of the Klal, came to a place where it was closer to the forces surrounding us. It wasn't close to the Jewish heart, to the way that we are. And prayer is called Avodah Shebelev, a work that we do within the heart. And like we said before, why is it a work of the heart? It's because all that's going to happen here is based on the Kavanas Halev, is based on the intention of the heart. And so there's nothing else that's working. Everything else maybe is ma'orer the heart, is helping us wake up the heart. But the one that's going to do the work, if any work is going to be done, is only the heart. And so that's why it's called Avodah Shebelev, and that's why this is a work that we need to do at a time where the Midas HaRachamim is distant from us. So when we are in a situation where kindness is being alienated, where the light is becoming dark, where people think that the Creator wants something that is not within the context of compassion, so then Avodah Shebelev, the intention of the heart and the proper awakening of the heart through prayer, is what's going to lead us to a more compassionate interpretation of reality. And that's what's going to awaken the Creator within. That's going to allow us to find redemption within our condition. And so the Avodah Shebelev becomes more and more important the more distant we are from the Midas HaRachamim. The more people are not behaving in a way that's kind and compassionate, the more people are not thinking and feeling in ways that are kind and compassionate. So the more we go away from the light, the more we need prayer. The closer we come to the light, the more we need Torah, the more we need learning, wisdom, in order to contain the light. When we're far from the light, all wisdom can do is awaken the heart so it can pray, so it can come closer to the light. But there's no real Torah away from the light. In brutality, in cruelty, there's no Torah, there's no teaching, there's no wisdom. And so to get out of that, first comes prayer. First comes opening up the heart. Shifchu kamayim libech nechach pnei Hashem. Spill your heart like water. That means to loosen up our perception, to realize that we have become sort of dried up in a specific form, and that form doesn't really exist. This is our perception. And this is what happens when people move away from compassion and kindness, is that they become frozen in an unpleasant way. But out of fear, out of suffering, out of going through different experiences, their heart becomes hard. Their heart becomes what the Torah calls Orla Salev. Orla Salev means that the heart is desensitized. It can no longer feel what a human heart is supposed to feel. And what can wake up a heart is tefillah, is speaking to the owner of the heart. And the owner of the heart, like the pasuk says, Tzur levavi v'chelke elihim lo elam. Who owns our heart? The one that created it, not us. When we say us, we're talking about the opinionated one that's thinking and taking control. That's the ego. Us, we don't own the heart. The ego doesn't own the heart. The heart was there before we had opinions, before we had a concept of self. So it's not us, the one thinking, that owns the heart. it's the one that made the heart that owns the heart, and that's the one, that's the creator. And so with all our other organs, everything that we have, he made. If we learn how to use these organs in order to connect to their source, that's when we can create change, that's when we can become. If it's just our opinions, our ego, that are trying to somehow use different methods in order to gain something, in order to manipulate something, in order to change things that weren't meant to be changed, that's when prayer is not prayer. That's when intention becomes a problem, and then we're not really making change in the deeper worlds. So we're going to try to see what is the approach to prayer that, coming from the Baal Shem Tov, of course everybody according to their level. We cannot receive in our vessels more than we have developed them and more than they're ready to receive. But nevertheless, the more we're going to speak about the subject, the vessels are going to develop and they're going to be able to receive more. And then, of course, in our personal experience, when we pray, when we open ourselves up to the higher realms, we'll be more effective. We'll feel more the difference that's happening, because we're actually touching the right places inside. The organs are actually turning in the right direction. And that's the kavanah that we're looking for. And so we'll start here. Amud HaTfilah, the first piece. It goes on the pasuk in Parshas Noach when he's making the teva, and there's a play on words over here, just like everything in the Torah is a play of words. The whole Torah is a play of words, because the Torah is speaking to all types of people, to all levels of understanding, to all levels of development, and therefore every word has multiple meanings based on where the person is located and what he thinks he's trying to accomplish and achieve. And so the word over here that we're playing with is teva. Teva means the ark where Noach went in with all the animals, but teva also means the word that we go into when we pray. So our entire life force is moving into a word, and in that word it's acting, it's becoming, and in a way also it's saving itself from the flood that's going on outside the word, the word, which is what's going on in the world. In the world there's a flood, there's madness, there's a lot happening that doesn't align with the true nature of life. And in the word, we can find safety from the world. And so that teva could mean that. And that's how he's going to learn it over here. So he says, Tzoyer tasel teva. Tzoyer means a light, something that shines. There's different shitot, what that light was, whether it was a diamond, a beautiful stone that was lighting up the teva, or there was an actual window. Vel amma techalenu amana, you should finish it up to an amma. So Rabbi Yisrael Baal Shem Tov, Olav Shalom Aimer, Rabbi Yisrael Baal Shem Tov, his name was Yisrael ben Eliezer, and this name is a name that's mesugel for a person when he's in an eis tzara, when there's something that's not going his way, or at least it seems that he's going through a difficulty. So this name, Yisrael ben Eliezer, is his gula to wake up the light of the Baal Shem Tov. The light of the Baal Shem Tov represents this turning phase from where within the complete darkness suddenly comes something else. And this something else is the light of the Baal Shem Tov that came from the complete darkness that was prior to his time, when there was extreme suffering in Klal Yisrael. There was extreme confusion. Klal Yisrael had been through some very big disappointments only a couple of generations earlier. There was in Tzfas, there was the big light that seemed to be the light of Mashiach, the Arizal, and the Chavrai, even before the Arizal, Moshe Cordovero. There seemed to be the light of the Geula starting to shine, and then it turned away. And then after that, there was a lot of different schools of Kabbalah that were trying to bring the light. One of the leaders that ended up being a leader that turned Klal Yisrael off was the Kat Shatz, Shabtai Tzvi, who took that light in another way and caused a tremendous disappointment in Klal Yisrael, because not only were they prepared as if now is the Gula happening and at the end it's not, but also the things that he revealed, the things that he played with, the ideas, a lot of good ideas became bad, a lot of bad ideas became good. There was a big mix-up of ideas, and Klal Yisrael was very confused and very disillusioned with the wisdom of the Kabbalah and where it's going to take us. And so after that came the Ramchal, as is known. The Ramchal was placed in Cherem because of his greatness in Kabbalah. people didn't trust him anymore. They didn't trust Kabbalah. They didn't trust wisdom. They thought that maybe we just have to go back to our dogmatic past. Maybe that's the only safe route. And so afterwards comes the Baal Shem Tov, and again the Baal Shem Tov is placed in Cherem for the same reason, that, oh, you're trying to bring wisdom into Klal Yisrael. We already know that wisdom causes problems. We're afraid of wisdom. And so there was a turn, and so this name represents light within darkness, and therefore in times of darkness this name can help awaken the light that we're all searching for. So he says, Yisrael ben Eliezer, Tzoyer tasu lateva, shetia ateva she'odem medaber betoret betfilah matzir, that every word that we say needs to shine. We need to invest ourselves in the words that we say so that the word shines. Now, when we're speaking about the word, we're not speaking about what's coming out of our mouth. Even though that's part of the word, that's the kli, that's the vessel of the word, but that's like the body of the word. And the body is not the one that's going to shine. What's going to shine is the neshama, the light within the word. And so within our pronunciation, there is an intention. And that intention is what needs to shine. What does this word mean to you right now? What are you trying to accomplish with this word? Where are you? And what are you doing with this word? And this goes back to his way of seeing reality in general. And this is how he continues. Ki yesh bekol ois, oilamis, and neshamas ve'elahus. And this is known, this is a theme in Hasidus, in the Shittas of Baal Shem Tov, that in everything that we experience, in everything that is, and everything that exists, there are three layers. They're called oilamis, neshamas, and elahus. And this is found in many places, in many ways, how we can look at these three and what's the relationship of these three. But the basic idea is, oilamis speaks about the chitzonius of everything. Oilamis means, what is it? What's the muhus of the thing? What are we interacting with? So in the sense of saying a letter, what letter is it? What sound am I making? How am I pronouncing the sound? What does it wake up in me, even physically, just the vibration, before I have any intention? That's the oilam. That's the world that we're interacting with. Then there is neshamas. Neshamas is the human quality within that. So within everything that we interact with, there is the actual thing, and there is the human quality. What does it mean to a human being? What does a human being have from it? Does a human being like it? Does it help human beings? Do I personally feel a connection to it? All this is in the gather of neshamas. And the third level is elahus. Elahus is beyond neshamas. Elahus is source. Elahus means, what does this particular vibration mean to the one who created it? Why was it created? And how does it interact with reality? Because the creator never left reality. Which means that every sound, every force, every koyach that has the ability to exist in this world has also a divine effect on this world. So it's not just that it is, and now it's separated from its source. Now it's just, let's say if I look at a rock, I see in the oilamis there's a rock. Now, the rock has never been separated from its elahus. How do I access it? What can I do with it? What does it mean to me? That's already a separate discussion. That's a discussion in the part of neshamas. Meaning, how can a human being gain access to that elahus through the rock? But every rock, everything that exists, has an active divine force that is currently active in it. And this is why, for example, we can use herbs to heal our body. How can a herb heal something if there's been a decree? There's been a decree on a certain body that it's going to go through a specific experience. Why would a grass or something else that's external to the person, external to his experience, external to his actions, to his interactions, how can that suddenly solve his problem? And the answer is because that represents the divine. And if I take the right divine force and I connect it to the divine problem that this person is having, the problem is always that the divine is not flowing properly. That's any form of disease means that in that organ, in those cells, the divine connection has been somehow tampered with through the behavior, the understanding, the intentions of the person. So if I'm taking the grass, if I'm taking the medicine and I'm connecting it to where the problem is, the divine language speaks to itself. And the divine heals the divine. And so wisdom means to understand all the divine forces within everything manifested. Everything manifested is divine. Everything manifested has oilam, it has neshama, and it has elohus. And these are like three different perspectives of seeing the same thing. These are three different languages of speaking the same thing. And therefore, when we want to daven, we want to go into these realms and over there create the healing. We want to activate the elohus within the letters that we're pronouncing. Because those letters, the elohus within the letters, can heal everything, can restore everything. Not only that, the elohus within the letters is what caused the problem in the first place. How did we get separated from our own divinity? How did these things become so that we are in a place where the elohus is not activated? It's because the divine force within the letters have caused separation. This is called that the dibur is in galus. The dibur is in galus, then the das goes into galus. Because the dibur is the divine manager of the koiches of the neshamas that are in the world. The elohus is above the neshamas. And so whatever we're doing, whenever we're tampering with the elohus through dibur, we're also affecting the neshamas very, very deeply. It's like their whole reality is shifting into different worlds as we're speaking. And so the neshamas are going after the dibur. And the dibur can connect the neshamas to their elohus, or chaz v'shalom cause separation. And so when we see that in every letter there is oilam es neshamas and elohis, through a person using these letters, through a person expressing the letters, oilam im iskashim im is yachdim ze im ze. The oilamas go into the neshamas, and the neshamas go into the elohus, and they all become united as one. So when one is saying a letter, all the different parts of him that are in this letter are all being activated. There's an emotion within the letter. There's a belief within the letter. There's a desire within the letter. All this is residing within the physical aspect of the letter. And so when we are expressing the letter, we are shaking all these different places. All these different places are going to conform with our work through the letter that we are pronouncing. So, so this is just one letter. Then comes the power within this letter, all the powers that we've discussed that are within the letter, they will attach themselves to the other letters until together the letters are going to form a word. So by the time we've said a word, we've already awoken within reality so many different forces, and together they're going to be the word. And now the word gains access to new dimensions. The dimensions of meaning, because as long as there was just a letter, it was a symbol. And even though it was vibrating and it was touching things, it didn't mean yet anything. Now, when we are complete with the word, now there's meaning. Meaning is a whole new type of home for the soul. And then, beyond the meaning, once there is a word, we have awoken a spiritual being that represents this word, that represents not only the specific meaning that this person has, the specific intention that this person has when he says the word, but all the intentions that could possibly be included in this word. And this includes all the tzirufim. It includes the gematrias. It includes any form of meaning that we can take from this word, all included in this angel that we have woken up by saying the word. And within that angel, there's all the potentials that this word can mean, but there's also all the actualities of what this word meant to everyone that ever existed. Everybody that ever said that word. What did it mean to them? What was it to them? Because the collective soul is giving meaning to the words based on the collective. So just like a child, as he's growing up and he gains knowledge of the meaning of a word. Now that word means to him whatever it is that he was exposed to at the time. So let's say if he learned the word horse. So which horse was he shown? Was he shown a white horse or a brown horse? Was it a big horse? Was it a little pony? Was it a free horse? Was it the horse that did work? Was it the horse that was used for racing? All these nuances are within the child's mind as he's thinking horse. Now, when we're talking about the collective, the same process happens as it does with the child. Every time someone used that word, they woke up that force within the collective. So every meaning everyone ever gave to that word is included within that being that wakes up when we say a word. And this is why tzaddikim were able to play with the meanings of words, and they were able to change the tzirufim and gain different manifestations of that same source. And so let's say if a malach was sent with a gzeira, with specific words of what needs to happen, the tzaddikim would play with the letters and say, you malach, you can come also in this way from the same word, and therefore this is what I want you to manifest, instead of the original intent. So tzaddikim would actually play with this because this is real. This is in the spiritual worlds, in the world of perception, emotion, existence. This is more real than what happens in the physical. This is real on a managerial level. What happens in the physical is the employee level, is where things actually come out. But why did they come out the way that they come out? That happens in the realms of speech, in the realms of words and letters. What are people saying? What are people doing? And from here we can understand also, obviously, how big of a problem we can create when we use the wrong words, when we speak in a way that's inappropriate, and we're causing these managerial entities, we're causing these spiritual powers to somehow go against humanity, whether it's an individual, a collective, or everyone together. And so this power is the real human power. This is why we're called medaber. This is how we were defined as a being. There's the doimem, tzomeach, chai. These are three levels of existence. We have a whole different level of existence due to our intelligence. That's called the medaber. Medaber means we're going to dress up the manager of the world, how he's going to manage the world. That's what dibur means. The word dibur means, dabar echad lador means one leader to a generation, which means dibur means managing, leading, directing. That's the meaning of the word, dibur. So whenever we are speaking, we're directing. Who are we directing? We're directing the spiritual entity that runs the world. That's who we're directing at all times. Sometimes we'll direct him very specific. We might say something to ourselves and then we'll do it. That alone is directing the manager of the world. Sometimes we'll speak to others. Others will do. That's directing the manager of the world. Sometimes we'll speak to others and just cause thought to happen. That's still changing the entire trajectory of reality, of what's going to take place on this planet. And so the dibur is in charge. How is it in charge? Because it's going straight to the elohus of the bria. It's going straight to the divine forces. Unlike all the other things that we do, where we have to take different elements. Let's say when we do certain mitzvahs, now it's going to come, let's say Sukkot. So we're going to take the lulav and the esrog and the adasim and the arovis, and they all mean things, and they all have elohus, and they all represent elohus. They represent the 4 letters of the name. That's why when we put the 4 letters together, when we put the 4 meaning together, putting the name together, that has meaning in the higher worlds. But in dibur, we are much closer to the essence of things. We're much more in charge. It's much more real. It's much faster. And so over there, we're literally touching, we're literally directing the angels that are going to manifest reality. And so when we get to a word, when we get to a teva, it means that we already have a whole team over here working. We already have the parts within each letter, and there are multiple parts like we discussed. And then we have the meaning of the word, and the word ties together all these angels, all these vibrations, all these koiches. And now together we have a word. And this is very important to realize, especially nowadays, because there has been a war on our spiritual power. And the war on our spiritual power plays out by reducing our ability to focus, reducing our attention span, reducing our ability to really be. And if we don't have the ability to pay attention, if we don't have the ability to really feel, to really desire, to really be, then the movements that we are making in the spiritual realms are minuscule, are almost invisible. The more we can focus, the more we can be, the more we can really be present as we speak, the more we are digging deep into our spiritual power and making a difference. And so over time, especially now with all the technological gadgets, our attention span has been obliterated, which means that spiritually we are much smaller than what human beings used to be. And one of the first places where it's going to make a difference is in our prayer. Prayer is working on our attention span. That's the meaning, that's the avodah shebelev. The avodah shebelev is how much attention can we give? How much attention can we invest in our words in order for them to be real, so that our entire spiritual power is awakened and alive within those words? And when that's present, that's when we are shaking the upper worlds. That's when everything is changing. That's when all the angels are scrambling to fulfill our desires. And this was the simon, I think it was Chanina ben Doise, but he used to be able to say after he prayed, if a choile was going to get better, if a sick person was going to find healing. And he said that what he uses as a sign is im shgurat tfilasi befi, meaning, can I focus on the prayer while I'm praying? Then I know that I'm making a change in the spiritual realms. If I cannot focus, it means that there are demons that are not allowing the prayer to go through. Therefore, I don't have the attention, and therefore I don't have my spiritual tools. If I don't have my tools, I will not be able to make a change. And so he could tell just by his trying to focus if the prayer was meant to be accepted. Therefore, he is allowed into his workplace. He is allowed to use his tools, and therefore, of course, the work will be done. Or if there is something that's not allowing him to be there, and therefore it's not possible for him to do his work, and therefore the work cannot be done. And so it was a very practical reality for him. It wasn't a theoretical concept. Part of our losing our ability to properly focus, to have our attention in the right way, is also our lack of belief in the effectiveness of what we're doing. And so if we don't believe that our words are having an impact, the nature of the soul is that it cannot invest itself. It can only invest itself based on how much does it believe that what it's doing is actually effective, is going to make a difference. And so today in the Western society, in the cultures where human speech means nothing, nobody cares, nobody gets it, nobody understands, we lose our entire power. We go back from being a medaber to being a chai. Because it's not our ability to say words that make us a medaber. We can still be an animal that can speak words. Speaking words doesn't change us from the animal to the human. What changes us from an animal to a human is our ability to understand the words until it moves our heart, until we can awaken compassion. If words can move our heart, then there's a human connection. If words are just being said on a practical level in order to get an external result, that's still an animal, that's still imagination, that's not actual words. And those words obviously don't go high in order to make a difference. This is the lashon that's used in the Zohar. It says that if the words come out b'tchilu irechimu, then it's parches le'elo. The chilu rechimu means awe and love. Then it's parches le'elo, means then it flies above. Then these are the wings that make it go high. Where's the high? The high is the divine force that's hiding within that word, within that syllable, within that sound. And so when there is love and awe, what does that mean? It means that the words are touching the strings of the heart. When the strings of the heart are awakened, then and only then do we touch the Elohus within the Bria? Are we touching the managerial aspect of life and we're making a difference there? Of course there will be a change there. Just as sure as if someone moves something physically, then that thing will be in a different place. The same way, if someone moves something spiritually, that thing will be in a different place. If someone moves the managerial forces of reality, reality will come out different. Reality will manifest different. This is a fact. This is a reality that's never changed. How much we have access to that, how much we can make a difference, this is constantly fluctuating. So we have a teva, v'achar kach misyachdim yichudim amitim be'Elohus. This word and this meaning is going into the place where there is concept, the place where the forces are actually translating reality. And this relates to the stars. All the words that we can use are relating to the stars. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it says, "Amoitzi b'mispar tzvaam," he brings them all out in number. Lekulam shemes yikri, he calls names to each one. Because our ability to speak, our ability to have so many different concepts within our mind and to be able to interact with these concepts comes directly from the stars. And so whenever we're speaking, whenever we said we're waking up a malach, we're waking up a force, we're waking up a koach, all these are represented in the Shemaim. All these are represented in the actual physical stars that we can see. Some of them we can no longer see because of the amount of light that we are creating, even in the nights. But all these stars are shining their vibration. Their vibration is creating our capacity for intelligence. And then we are interacting with them every time we are using these powers, every time we are talking, every time we are creating. In the world of concept, we are creating based on certain stars that allow us to create that allow us to connect to that allow us to develop that. All of that is already in the map of intelligence called the sky. And so, when we wake up a koyach, we're not just waking up the external part of the koyach, we're even not just waking up the part of the koyach that we're intending for. Once we touch on the koyach, once we wake it up, things wake up that are way beyond our understanding, way beyond we can't see how such big changes can come from such little words. But the nature of life is such that this is how it works. When a star changes its settings, when a malach changes its relationship with humanity, it's not that, now whatever we asked it might give. No, now that star can change from being a category, from being someone who stands against humanity, to someone who stands for humanity, to being a sanegor. And that can change many different aspects that we wouldn't even imagine is related to that. This we can see also in the body, because the body is built from the stars, because every organ is created through the stars, and there's a relationship between the organs and between the parts. We can touch one side of the body, one organ that might not seem related to anything else, and many different parts in the body can respond. And the same thing when we're eating foods, we're activating different forces. When we are interacting with anything in the world, whether it's the doimim, the tzameach, or the chai, and even more so when we're interacting with the medaber, all the different forces are being activated. All the different forces are changing shapes. And this has actual results. This is how life is built. This is always happening. It's just so subtle. For us, it's so behind the scenes that it's almost like it doesn't exist. But it exists more than the external. Our inability to focus and our inability to pay attention to the subtle is what's separating us from reality. Because reality is not what's happening outside of us. Reality are these subtle forces, the Elohus, the divinity within creation, that's actually making the decisions of creation every single moment. The thought that will come to our mind, the feeling, the emotion, the organs are constantly interacting, the way we're going to digest our food, the way that we're going to feel, what we're going to want, what we're going to shy away from, what's going to hurt us, what's going to help us. All this is constantly emotion. And it's all run by the Elohus within the Bria, that's the highest. It affects the neshamas, the neshamas that are within everything, and it affects the oilamas, which is the lowest, which is the kli that's holding all this. This also means that, for example, now, as we're speaking, we are making tikkunim for many neshamas that were here prior to us. Because these ideas are related to people who thought, people who experienced, people who felt, people who wanted, people who didn't want certain things. And all this is going into what's going to keep the world going. So for example, the obvious neshama that's involved over here is the neshama of the Baal Shem Tov. So obviously, as we're having this discussion, the neshama of the Baal Shem Tov is involved in this discussion, because without him this discussion wouldn't be taking place. But just like the neshama of the Baal Shem Tov is involved, so are many, many other neshamas. In every sound, in every meaning, in every concept, there are neshamas who had those concepts before us, who understood those concepts before us. There might even be neshamas who tried to advertise these concepts. There might have even been neshamas who lived with these concepts for days, for weeks, or for months. There might be neshamas that this was their last thought. All these neshamas have relationships with these sounds, with these meanings, with these words, and they're all being worked through right now. They're all motivating me to say. They're all saying with me. They're all becoming. And obviously my neshama is involved, your neshama is involved. And so when we say neshamas, we mean that everything that exists is filled with sparks of human life. Sparks of human life that have been through this process and have attached themselves to all kinds of things and have given their life force and invested their life force into all kinds of things. All these things are still carrying those sparks, and all those things are still being affected by the Elohus that's running those parts. And that's what we're interacting with when we are creating Dibur. B'tzarech ha'adam lichlal nishmasai b'chal b'china b'china ma'niskar. So in order for a person to be able to have an effect, in order for this person to be able to release a word in proper prayer, he needs to include his soul with all these souls, with all these forces, with all these angels that he's working with. Because imagine if I walk into someone's home and I start taking some of their tools and I start creating something without even their permission, or without even acknowledging that I'm doing something with someone else's things. And so obviously that's inappropriate. The appropriate way would be to introduce myself, to create an intention of what I want to do, and if we have a shared intention, of course he will share his tools. And so as I'm using all these words, as I'm using the wisdom, as I'm using the koiches of all these neshamas and how they translated the Elohus throughout all the generations, I need to include myself in that. I am one of these neshamas. I am one of the neshamas that has been coming again and again, that has been attached to so many different things, that is trying to find resolution. And this prayer represents all these neshamas. This prayer is not for me individually. Me individually, I don't exist. I don't know what I want. I'm not a separate being. I'm a being amongst many beings. I'm part of the klal. I'm part of this light that fills all the neshamas. And as that light, I am saying what I'm saying. As that, as the collective, I'm saying what I'm saying. Not as me, as the individual, as the one with his limited opinions. And so the neshama of the one who is doing the work, the one who is doing the prayer, must be included with all the sparks and all the parts, all the neshamas, all the malachim, and all the divinities that are involved in this work. And this is why we say b'shem kol Yisrael, when we say that we want to be meyachet ketchebrich shchentei, right? We say l'shem yichud. We say we're doing it b'shem kol Yisrael, in the name of all the neshamas, in the name of the klal. For them we're doing it. Only then is it relevant. Otherwise, what are you doing? Who are you doing it for? What's happening? Your meyachet kitchabrich shchentei, who are they for you? They're only the klal. Kitchabrichi belongs to the klal. The shchentei belongs to the klal. As the klal, I'm meyachet kitchabrichi shchentei. There's no other way to do it. HaKadosh Baruch Hu cannot rest only in the reality that he created as a whole. That's his place, that's his home. And we are part of that home, and therefore, as that home, we are inviting him into his home. V'az misyachdim kol ha'elomis ka'echad. When the individual unites with all the forces, all the worlds are uniting. Because each individual is a olam oleh. Each individual has all the levels of all the worlds within him. So by him uniting, all the worlds unite. All the trillions of stars that are represented in your body, all of their forces, all of these angels, everyone will unite with your intention to unite. Your intention to unite. When we live in physical bodies, we are upside down. And so everything seems to us upside down. And so we think if I'm doing something, it must be more than just an intention. An intention is nothing. An intention is just an idea that rises somewhere within. Maybe a few molecules change their position. But when I do something, my whole body is doing. But the opposite is true. The more subtle, the smaller the movement, the more spiritual, the more real. Until we get up to the Kavyochel, to the Boire Olam, no molecules move. Nothing. There's no change. And through that, he creates everything. Through that, he makes everything. And so when we're doing action, we're furthest away from his way of behaving, from his understanding, from his way of creating life and seeing life. But when we're creating an intention, then we're closest to him. This is our strongest power. This is our highest ability. Is to create desire, create intention, create something that's real within the spiritual realm. That moves mountains. That's much bigger than action. That changes worlds. That creates and destroys. Everything that comes out in action, everything comes out in movement. Where did it live first? In intention and desire, in the spiritual realms. From there it's coming. Nothing comes in here without that. And so when the person unites, when the intention unites, when the source of the neshama unites, all the worlds unite. V'nase, v'oilim, everything goes up, everything has an aliyah. Aliyah means it comes closer to reality. Reality is kindness, forgiveness, and compassion. The opposite of imagination, which causes separation, which causes the ego to take charge, which causes people to become cruel and become cold and become disconnected from the real essence. And so all the worlds go up. V'nase simcha v'tanu godol adein shir. And there's happiness and pleasure that has no limit. The worlds are rejoicing because they united. When they unite, they complete each other. They fulfill each other. Just like when, on the Gashmis level, when Nechosna and Nekala unite, Allah has kama v'kama on this level where the unification is completely in essence, where there's no separation in any way once the unification is done appropriately. V'zeu tachtim shnim v'shlishim ta'asena. This is why the Torah says to Noach, create your teva, create your word with 3 layers. The layer of the people, that's the Elohus, that's the management. The layer of the animals, that's the neshamas, that's the individual forces that are serving management. And the layer of the psoiles, the layer where all the leftovers are going to, that's the layer of the oilimus. That's just the layer of the vessels. The chitzayin, that's what we can see with our chushim, with our senses. That's just the external shell, so that we can relate through our body to what's taking place spiritually. So just like when we see a human being, we know that we're not looking at a piece of flesh. We're not looking at a physical entity. We're looking at an entity that feels, that thinks, that can express, that can appreciate, that can desire, that can intend. All this is within what we see as physical. Our eyes cannot see who can feel. Our eyes cannot see who can think. But by looking at the physical, we know that within that is all the other parts. This is what we're talking to. We're not talking to the physical. We're talking to the one who dwells within the physical. And so the same thing for every force. The same thing for everything that we can see. It's not that the physical is what it is. Even a rock is not a physical entity. The rock that we can see is a physical representative of some type of spiritual entity that we need to learn and to know. And so everything else. And even more so when we're dealing with the more subtle. So if we're hearing a sound, if we're hearing a syllable, it's not what we can hear that's the force, that's the power. What we can hear is just the body. What's going on behind that body? Who is alive behind that body? What is the life force that is moving this and making it manifest? Because in there's levels upon levels upon levels that go back all the way to the Ein Sof, all the way to the beginning of manifestation, from the Creator Himself. And so that's Tachtim, Shnim, Shlishim, the 3 floors. The Hainu, Oilimus, Neshamas, Ve'Elohus. At Tlas Om and Isla, he has 3 worlds. And as we know that the worlds are also represented in Bria Yetzira Asiya, right? The Atzilus is reality itself. Atzilus is the place where Adam Rishon was before the Chet of the Eitz Hadas. After the Eitz Hadas, we have levushim for reality itself, and these levushim are called Bria Yetzira Asiya. These levushim get created by our thoughts, our speech, and our action on the most simple level of how we can explain it. But these levushim, these worlds, correlate to Oilemus, Neshamas, and Elihus. The Asiya is the Oilemus, is the Chitzonius, is the physical part. The Neshamas is the Pnimius, this is already the Chayas, this is the feelings that we have, the emotions, the speech, the way that we give form to the reality. And then beyond that is the Olam HaMachshava, that's Elihus, that's where management is. Management is always in the Olam HaMachshava. Everything that happens in Dibur and Emaisa, where was the decision? The decision was always in Machshava, on the manager level. And so the whole process of reality takes place in speech. And that speech that created reality, Bidvar Hashem Shemayim Nasu, that's our power to create interpretations of reality, which we call Tfilah and Torah. So when we speak, we're using the force that created life, and now we're creating life that's going to allow us access to life. So the Klal created the big life, created the big world with his speech. Everything that we see are his syllables, are his words, are his sayings, are his expressions. And our personal expressions are the expressions of our ability to create interpretation of this reality, of what it really means. And when we will be able to take the Dibur out of Golus, when we will be able to create speech that actually represents reality accurately, that's when Imala Oretz Deis Hashem, then all we will know is Him. There will be nothing else. There will be nothing that contradicts Him. And this is the cause, this is the reason of our prayers. All of our prayers are really to awaken compassion within the human heart, specifically starting with the very heart that's opening up in order to say the words of the prayer. That's the most important heart that needs to become compassionate. If not, we've gained nothing. And when we awaken compassion within that heart, and we say the words while there's compassion, then we awaken the forces that run reality so that they will run reality more compassionately, starting with the one that prayed, and then spreading to places and levels that we cannot imagine or know. So may we all learn how to use our Dibur. May we all learn how to protect our Dibur so that we don't cause things that we ourselves regret. And may our Dibur awaken our hearts and lead us to the final redemption. May it happen soon.